Veronica received her doctorate in Biosciences and AgriFood Sciences at the University of Córdoba, Spain, with a focus on stone pine growth and fruiting, variability, adaptation, and management. In 2019, when we met, she was distinguished by IUFRO for the Outstanding Doctoral Research. She's currently leading the program on development and contribution of high-value forest and forest fruit species for the Chilean Forest Institute. With that note, I'm turning it over to our speaker. Welcome, Veronica, and it's all yours.
Very much, Jim. Sharing. Good morning, good evening, and good night to everyone around the world participating in this webinar. I am very glad to have this opportunity to share some ideas and results on our studies on stone pine cultivation and the emerging bioeconomy in Chile. And I'm so grateful for the organizers for giving me this opportunity. So thank you very much. And we start right away. Making a context of the Chilean forestry, which is based on the industrial plantation model with an important planted area, almost 3 million hectares, mostly from Pinus radiata, Eucalyptus nitens, and globulus. So you see that there is a concentration on the species, also geographically, because it's quite concentrated in the central southern area of the country, and also in the stakeholders participating, because an important amount of these plantations, over 50%, belong only to 3 big companies. Now, I have this here. However, Chile has a wide range of environments, over 40 degrees of latitude, with aptitude for different species. You see, it is this very long, narrow stripe located in the Pacific coast of South America. So it varies a lot. It has many, many different environments. And diversification can be implemented by using non-traditional species, productive models, by widening the geographical distribution, and also by including marginalized stakeholders. The benefits of a diversified forest sector include, among several others, the generation of new products, a better site use, a reduction of the phytosanitary and economic risks, and also it is key for the climate change adaptation. So we have to be patient because it's not changing the presentation. When I press the button. So, wow. I don't know how we will proceed with this. Hope it won't bother. So regarding the fruit production, the planted area has increased in the last 2 decades. And regarding dry fruits, there has been an important increase in walnut, hazelnut, and almond planted area. Please, my apologies, but it's not changing the, I'm afraid. No.
You may have to back out each time. There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. So regarding the fruit export, the dry fruit section has increased quite a lot, especially in processed fruits, especially shelled hazelnut and walnuts. And it's a very dynamic sector. New plantations have been established continuously. It is a growing sector, and there is interest, a lot of interest for this kind of fruit because of the characteristics of the harvest and post-harvest management, and also because of the growing demand worldwide. So we also have some native nuts with a cultural and spiritual importance for First Nations. Here you have Hibuina avellana, which is called the Chilean hazelnut. It's smaller, harder, and very tasty, and is commercialized locally. The oil has many properties, including being a very good sun filter, so has been exported in the past. Then we have, of course, Araucaria araucana, that curiously, it's a nut. It is called Pinyon, which in Spanish is pine nut. That was the name given by the immigrants when they saw the tree, because there is an important similarity with the stone pine umbrella crown shape. So we call this Araucaria nuts also Pinyon. So coming to stone pine, it is a Mediterranean species of very high value. It is called the diamond of the dried fruits, with high prices that have been increasing from 20 to almost 80 euros per kilogram at the wholesale. So it's really interesting. The tree is characterized by a long cone development cycle that takes over 3 years. And so in the same tree, you have 1, 2, and 3 year old cones developing at the same time. You have 3 harvests on the tree, which poses a very important, challenging management. Cones are harvested mostly from non-managed forests in temperate zones around the world, and it is considered a key drought-resistant species that may be used to replace other traditional fruit trees in areas that are going through the climate change modifications with higher temperature and lower rainfall. So coming to the world tree nut production, pine nuts are among the 9 most important traded globally dried fruits, accounting for 1% of the total world trade in this kind of fruits. However, in that number are included pine nuts from 4 species, which are Pinus gerardiana, corayensis, iberica, and also Pinea, which is the species we are working with. Pinus pinea nuts are characterized by a growing and unsatisfied demand, driven by the greater purchasing power of a wealthier population, the BRIC countries' role, which are Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and the global trend of consumption of healthy and natural food. It is used as in the traditional gastronomy in many areas. For example, it is the essential component of the pesto in Italy, and it is also associated as a luxury item as caviar and lobster. So besides the commercialization of the white pine nuts, it is possible also to trade cones, that many producers around the world just buy cones because they want to make their own processing. Then the in-shell pine nuts. And then there are 2 residues of importance, the cone residue here shown, and the pine nut shell, which has a high heat power. And so both account for over 80% of the total cone weight, so it's really important. So here we see a sustainable cascade use of a natural resource that also includes the reduction of the dependency on fossil fuels. So stone pine, it is an interesting species, not only by its high-value nuts, as we already saw. It grows fast, it requires a simple management, and it is suitable to be established both in pure and mixed plantations associated with other crops or animals, so in agroforestry or silvopastoral systems. In several countries, its cultivation as generated productive chains really important for its positive impacts, both directly and indirectly, along the important social and environmental effects. Jim, can you back up, please?
I don't have control of the slides, so.
Well, just a bit of patience. I don't know why this happened.
It's Zoom, anything can happen. So no, we'll work through it.
Okay, sorry about that. Please be patient. Well, the income and employment increase activate the household economy and reduces rural immigration. And regarding the Agenda 2030, its cropping would contribute to 9 out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So it's interesting. In Chile, it was introduced by European immigrants over 200 years ago as a reminder of their homelands, for the gastronomy, and it was established both as isolated trees in groups, mostly for cattle shadowing, and also in linear plantations, and used in traditional high-density plantations for soil erosion control and dune stabilization. From 2014 on, many new plantations have been established with the purpose of producing pine nuts to export to the world, with increasing planted area. Up to now, there are over 3,000 hectares established. The last years, we have only the estimation, but the nurseries keep buying seeds, so probably the total number is higher than that. There are also some few grafted orchards with very good results, and it is considered an emerging crop in the country. It shows a good growth and fruiting even without management, high adaptability and potential areas, and an earlier entry into production compared to Europe, to the native habitat. And here we have been working in the last 2 decades to develop some cropping techniques, looking for the domestication of the species. Actually, there are many, many things that we don't know yet and are necessary. Just to mention one that is so basic when talking about the fruit tree, the nutritional standards, for example, doesn't exist anywhere. So there are many, many important things to develop, and we hope to deal with them in the future. You know, we are working with this. There are also a couple of other advantages. It is harvested in winter when there is labor availability and also the machinery is available. it would be exported in the opposite season, and the in-shell pine nuts, if properly stored, can be kept for some years. So to reach a minimum quantity, it can be stocked. However, the minimum quantity is not that high, but it is also something that makes life easier for, especially for medium and small owners. In green here, you see highlighted where in Chile, the plantations are distributed, and the best area for the species cropping is the southern area of this highlighted zone. So with my colleague Claudia Delar, we studied the economics of stone pine cultivation under 3 management schemes. This is an information that is included in a chapter of a book that will be released by the end of the year on non-timber forest products and the bioeconomy. So there you will have the details. But well, the 3 schemes simulated are the medium intensity managed plantation, which are pure plantations and are the most commonly used in the country. Then an agroforestry system that was implemented, considering 2 years of potato at the very beginning, and then forage oat intercropping for sheep feeding and mutton production. And finally, a high intensity managed pure plantation in which technical procedures of the intensive modern fruit cropping are included, like fertilization, permanent irrigation in spring, summer, and autumn, depending on the years, and so on. So the 3 management schemes consider a soil preparation and a spacing of 6 by 6 meters with control for 8 years, pruning every 5 years, and thinning at age 25. And then differ in the fertilization, in which in both pure plantations, fertilization is applied every 5 years. This is based on a result we came up with in one of the studies we have done and published. You can consult it. At the end, I place the references just in case you are interested in. And in the agroforestry system, the same is applied by the first 8 years. There is an annual fertilization according to the intercropping requirements. And then the irrigation in the 2 medium intensity managed schemes, there is a manual irrigation in spring and summer only during the first 8 years. So the sensitivity analysis consider 4 scenarios: the most likely production and comb price, a reduction of the comb price by 10%, a reduction of the production by 20%, and both a reduction in production and price. The analysis considers a 1 hectare plantation in a rotation of 60 years. And we calculated the net present value discounted at 6 and 8%, which are the interest rates that the Chilean Social Development Ministry uses for its evaluations, and then 10% because it's the rate used by investors, private investors, usually here. And of course, the internal rate of return. We came to the same. I have to stop 1 minute to sorry about that, but it seems the only way to solve temporarily this problem. So regarding the results here, we have a lot of numbers. Don't get dizzy about it. Wow. So sorry. It's like have to play a little bit around here, but it's not optimal at all. Okay, well. Well, the high intensity managed plantations, you see, had a better performance than the medium intensity managed plantations in the most likely production and price scenario, and shows high interesting numbers. The agroforestry system, though, was most profitable than the medium intensity pure plantation and shows higher financial resilience. So you see that the positive outcomes in most of the scenarios, in all the scenarios, but in one case with the really high 10% interest rate. So it's important, and this is explained by the production of the first years in which trees are not fruiting. It's very important. So we have that the medium intensity agroforestry system was the more profitable and easy to implement by the landowners. This is really important. Wow, so sorry about this.
It's all right. It happens. Can you see now? Yeah, we can see. Good.
Please, my apologies. I'm trying to do my best. Well, the net present value was almost 3.5 times higher than in the monoculture under the same management scheme in the most likely scenario. Crops and sheep had no negative impact on tree development, which means that a correct animal load was applied. And the regulated grazing contributed to mutton production, reducing weed, and also the fire risk, which is very important in this current scenario of increasing wildfires around the globe and here too. Trees, though, negatively impacted potato and sheep production compared to the production of these crops without trees, but the combined system was more profitable under the same management intensity. So that was up to 8 years old when the shade from the expanded crowns hindered intercropping. The annual income, as I said, is relevant for the household economy, especially when the trees are not still not fruiting. So the medium intensity managed plantation was profitable at 6 and 8% interest rate. And the high intensity managed plantation was the most profitable scheme, with an initial investment twice as high as the medium intensity similar plantation. So this is explained because of the irrigation establishment, which is not cheap, but irrigation leads to an earlier and higher corn production with a positive profitability in the most likely production and prices scenario at all interest rates. So coming to the bioeconomy, this concept has evolved as a strategic economic movement based on a sustainable and equitable economic activity supported with science-based knowledge. In the last decades, Latin America has embraced some of the bioeconomy principles, although Chile does not have an official bioeconomy strategy. Some of the presidential candidates for the next coming election in November have included it in their programs. And Fraunhofer and other important institutions have called for the implementation of the bioeconomy, a formal implementation of the bioeconomy in the country. And so we expect it to be part of all the rules and regulations and aids that are available. However, the cultivation of fields and forests to supply the world, we're a forest, an export-oriented country, it represents a bioeconomy development itself after centuries of nitrate and copper mining history. The production, a productive cycle based on stone pine cropping would contribute to the economy, environment, and to a social improvement, especially in low-income communities, which really need support. And so supporting rural development and paving the way towards a bioeconomy in Chile. The stone pine cropping considers, many activities, starting from seedlings with only nursery related activities, jobs for the planting and management, and also harvests, as well as the machinery, the elaboration process in which the cones, from the cones, seeds are extracted, and from the seeds, then the white pine nuts are obtained, with this huge amount of biomass that is generated, and in a circular way is used in, it is used in some of the facilities to generate part of the energy needed. Then the marketing and sales with the classification of the product and all the activities related to the commercialization of this really interesting, healthy, functional food. So this cropping relies on a natural resource to produce food, energy, products, and related services, reducing the dependency also on fossil fuels, which is one of the classic definitions of bioeconomy, So sorry, again. Well, associated to stone pine cropping, there are several values that are important from the bioeconomy perspective. First of all, the cultural identity. The cone, stone pine cone, contains usually over 100 seeds. And so it is considered a symbol of unity, of fecundity and longevity, and also of eternity, because it's an evergreen tree. So it is used as a symbol in public buildings. This is in Spain, in religious icons, in many cultures. It was also found in Pompeii in the last discoveries. Here it is placed in a rural cemetery in Australia, so even in a non-native habitat for the species. Wow, I'm so sorry about this. It is curious that some of very exclusive residences, condominiums, both in Europe and in South America, are located in stone pine forest, as well as it is present in very exclusive places as Saint-Tropez, for example. And this is explained by its beauty. So it has a powerful role in the landscape aesthetics and recreation. Here you see Rome, which is an ancient historical place in which pines, stone pines are really present. They have inspired many artistic expressions around, including the composer Respighi, the symphony Pines of Rome. And it's present in, recreational trails, golf course, picnic areas, tennis court, and others. And it also has environmental benefits, very important ones, among which carbon sequestration and soil conservation and erosion control.
Veronica, you might want to just, instead of having each slide, just show the slide.
I'm trying to.
I know. I'm saying from the slide, not run the slide show, but.
Okay.
Just show that individual slide so it doesn't have so much animation in the background, might be creating challenges.
Yes.
Just for these last few slides,
last
few slides, so we can make sure there's time for questions.
Okay. Besides those three already mentioned, we have this productive cluster development, in which that can be developed at a small, medium, or bigger scale, in which all the cycle is comprised, including people. People are very important, because here the forest production has almost completely excluded the people from the process. I will just have to show. Okay, I cannot, I don't know if it's, you can see that?
Yeah, we can see that. Why don't we just talk off that slide?
Yeah. And also sustainable, then it allows a sustainable production and livelihood. That's really what we are looking for. So challenges to integrate the stone pine cropping in the bioeconomy are several, among which the promotion of new plantations for corn production to reach a critical area. Simply cannot. The sustainable cropping development of techniques necessary for a better performance, the establishment of processing plants to obtain pine nuts favoring local communities, the positioning of the locally grown pine nuts in international markets, probably through the creation of a brand, and political support, including laws, regulations, stakeholder education and training, and science, technology, and innovation. How this will be faced or addressed is an important question. We don't know, but we are trying to go step by step, improving a little bit. So just to conclude, well, stone pine cropping in different management schemes was financially attractive in this simulation. It may be applied in other areas, both native and non-native. Even though the prices will change, the numbers will change for sure in different countries because the prices are different. The results most probably will be also attractive there. Well, we already saw the results of the schemes. The convenience of the combined systems is interesting anyway. And this cropping will contribute to the bioeconomy by creating economic growth and also environmental and social benefits. And through the facilitation of the inclusion of forest landowners and small and medium enterprises that are currently marginalized from the forest industrial plantation model, especially here in this country, but I think it can be also the situation in other countries. And finally, it can help face important challenges, including the adaptation of the productive system to climate change because of this very interesting production that needs a lower hydric input. So having said that, my apologies again, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I thought that was very, very good, very well done, very interesting. Technological challenges are beyond me. I think we can all appreciate those challenges. I'm sure we've all been faced with them. So we do have a few questions. We've got about 20 minutes, 15 minutes for some questions. The first one comes from Josh. Let me turn my mic on so you can see me. And he asks, what were the yields like of the intercrop potatoes and oats in the agroforestry system? Were any negative interactions noticed between the overstory and the crops themselves? So the question is, were there any negative impacts on the crops?
Yes, the trees had indeed a negative impact on the crops that I can't remember for both the specific number, but the reduction was between 40 and 50% compared to the production in the pure traditional system. Let's say potato, only potato. Yes, there was a reduction, but the combined system was, when comparing with the pure stone pine plantation, beneficial, was a much higher profitability.
Very good. And Margaret asked a question about the genotypes chosen. How were they chosen to be used in production? And what method of propagation of trees for plantation establishment was used? So the genotype selection and how were the trees propagated?
Propagation, most, let's say 99% of the planted seedlings are propagated by seed using local seed sources. The Institute sells seeds with a known origin or just a mix of them and with different prices, but they also go and collect seeds around. So it's the genetic base is quite narrow because it was imported from Europe, mostly from Portugal, Spain, and some Italy. However, our previous studies show that there are some variability along the country. That's the propagation. Well, propagation is seedlings and genotypes. I already said that there is no genetic improvement program with results. We selected in the past several outstanding by their production, outstanding trees. We grafted half of them, but we lost most of the plantations in the 2017 wildfires that just burned over 500,000 hectares. So it was very complicated. So for the moment, no special selection.
Thank you. Jinlong in China has a statement and a question. He says, one challenge is NPV and similar indicators are to evaluation of various models of plantations are extremely hard to reflect what really happens on the ground due to several factors, the differences among sites due to growth of trees, yields and nets, labor costs, and collection and processing, and the quality of the final product. His question to you is, what are your suggestions for doing similar research in China? How would you reflect on what your experiences are with stone pine in Chile to suggest a colleague do similar kind of research in China?
I think that it is very useful to start with the characterization of what you have, because having many trees in a wide area would give you a basic inventory knowledge of how trees are growing, how they are producing, the health status, and others. Then from that base, you could make some comparative studies and detect which are the differences that might be improved by closing some gaps through management. That has been our experience. We started just having Europe here as our, benchmarking. And soon after, we realized that the situation here was very different. The species, for example, here grows very well in clayey soils. And so we started to see how the species adapted. I don't know if you are talking about the Pinus pinea or of Corayensis, but anyway, I would say that is a very good starting point. And then when you know how your species behave in that environment, in the wide range of environments, then you can start to think of how you can advance what you need to get your goals. If your goal is pine production or timber production or both, you could do different things. But we are very open to share information and to make comparative studies with other countries too.
So perhaps there's an opportunity for some collaboration there.
Yeah.
The next question deals with soil depth and wondering about what is the minimum depth of soil does Pinus pinea need to grow? Can it be grown on very thin soils, less than 50 centimeters?
It grows. It grows in very shallow soils. I would say that the decision would depend on the climate, because if it's too windy, the probability that trees then will fall is higher. So in that case, you could do it, but with lower densities to have shorter trees. Because if the density is higher, the trees will go up, will be taller because they just grow looking for the light. So it is possible, but then there is this risk. So you have to look at how winds are and the quality of the soil too. If it has more clay or a lower content.
Good, thank you. Let's see, Charles has a question about seed selection studies in nurseries and plantations. Have there been any sort of seed selection? I think you answered that earlier, but if you could reiterate.
Yes, sort of. Since the genetic basis here is reduced, it's not very high, because it was brought from the species from a couple of places from the native, the species native range. But in 200 years, it has adapted very well. So what we are recommending is just to collect the seeds from the same place in which they will be used. That's because there is an epigenetic effect, and seeds collected in the same area will have a better performance than when planted in that area. So that's why we are collecting and selling some of the seeds with the known origin to be used in similar areas. That is the most we can do for the moment.
Thank you. Karsten from Denmark asks, what can we learn from the Chile stone pine case in relationship to development of the forest-based bioeconomy?
Well, we can learn that a non-native species with economic importance and also other advantages, it is a multi-purpose species that produces a very high value product. So we learned that even if being an exotic species, it can be considered to be cultivated and in a non-native area in which it grows well anyway. And that if resources are allocated to research, we can develop our own productive model that will be developed for sure in the next years. Many plantations will start to produce. And so we will develop an economic activity that I hope it will be a virtuous cycle in which export will drive an improvement of local communities that will be involved in the whole productive chain. So it is possible to think to domesticate one species and to bring it to an intensive or semi-intensive productive system.
So you're saying that there is a place in the bioeconomy concept for non-native species that are domesticated and for commercial purposes.
Yes,
Yeah.
for non-native species and also for native species that produces non-timber forest products that could also be produced outside of the forest and to generate a productive chain. I mean, not only in the forest, also using interesting species, and there are so many all over the place.
Good, thank you. The next question, Andrew asks, has there been any economic modeling or research based on agroforestry using sheep grazing within the inner row pastures?
Well, sheep were included in this agroforestry system, and we have seen that sheep can be very interesting if the animal load is managed well. They can even be introduced since the very beginning. They don't damage trees if they have what pasture to eat. So it is possible. It is cheap, and then you will get sheep. Yeah.
Good. We have a question from Marian. Which international markets is Chile focusing on? What sort of global marketing strategies for pine nuts?
Well, actually, exporters and producers are quite used to export, and there is no one preference. I would say that what we have received in the last, I would say, 10 years, several groups of Portuguese, Spaniards, Italians that came to look for pine nuts, locally produced pine nuts. So there is a huge interest. The most important pine nut producer in Europe, in the world, for these pine nuts is Chabolino, participated in one of the important projects we have, came here, offer private contracts to people, so in a way that they could have sold the production even before the planting, actually. And this created a lot of interest. So far, none of the contracts have been signed because the people know that they can export wherever they are paid more. But I guess Europe will be one, North America for sure too, and another Latin American countries to start with, and it will develop. It will develop.
Good,
Yes.
thank you very much. We have time for maybe one more question. Sven Mutke, our friend in Spain, asks, any update on the Leptoglosis occidentalis prevalence in Chile this year?
Oh, well, yes. We published few months ago, a publication on this. We were monitoring the kernel yield. For several years, we have been doing this. And so we keep doing it after the Leptoglosis arrival in 2017. So far, we haven't found an impact on the kernel yield in any of the 7 sites monitored along the country. For sure, it will it will create an impact. It is difficult to control this insect spread, so it is present also in Argentina. So we will have to live with and include some treatments in some areas that are affected. And we will see it's a whole new thing to deal with, but it is here. Knowing its biology probably will grow and spread along the country. We have millions of hectares of pines, and it is a species that loves pines. So for sure it will increase, and we will just include it in the management schemes with some probably chemical control. And that's it.
So thank you very much again, Veronica. That was very informative, very well done.